Right now, as you are reading this, the value of the money sitting in your bank account is quietly disappearing. Not because someone stole it, not because you spent it, but because of a system that was designed from the very beginning to make sure that people like you and me never fully understand what is happening to our own money. If you are interested in money, finance, or changing your financial future, like this video and subscribe right now, because what you are about to learn can change the way you see money forever. Now, I want to start with a question. Have you ever noticed that your parents, or maybe your grandparents, could support an entire family on a single income? A factory job, a government job, a simple trade, and somehow they managed. They bought a house, they raised kids, they put food on the table every single night. But today, both husband and wife are working, sometimes 2 jobs each. And still, at the end of the month, the account is nearly empty. What happened? Where did all that financial breathing room go? Most people blame themselves. They think they are spending too much, saving too little, not working hard enough. But what if I told you the problem is not you? What if the problem is something much bigger and much older than any of us realize? A few months ago, I sat down with a silver dealer, not a famous investor, not a billionaire, just a regular man who has been in the precious metals business for over 20 years. He sells silver coins, silver bars, silver rounds to ordinary people, to families, to young workers trying to protect their savings. And in all those years, he told me, he has had thousands of conversations. But recently, something shifted. The questions people were asking him changed. They were no longer asking, is silver a good investment? They were asking, am I going to be okay? And when he told me that, something in my chest tightened. Because those are 2 very different questions. One is about opportunity, the other is about survival. He said to me, and I'm going to remember this line for the rest of my life. He said, they cannot hide this anymore. I asked him what he meant, and what he told me over the next 2 hours completely rewired the way I think about money, savings, and the future. So today, I am going to share everything he said, every uncomfortable truth, every hidden piece of the puzzle, because you deserve to know this, and honestly, most people never will. Let me take you back to something simple first. Imagine you worked really hard this summer. You mowed lawns, you helped neighbors, you saved up $500, you put that $500 in a jar under your bed, you didn't touch it, a whole year passes, you open the jar, $500 is still there. But here's the thing nobody tells you, that $500 can now buy less than it could a year ago. The number did not change, but the power of that money quietly shrunk. This is called inflation, and it is not a natural disaster. It is not an accident. It is built into the system. And the silver dealer, his name is Marcus, by the way, Marcus looked me straight in the eyes and said, inflation is the tax that nobody votes for and nobody announces. Think about that for a second. A tax you never agreed to. A tax no politician puts on a campaign poster. But a tax that drains working-class families silently, consistently, year after year. And here is where it gets uncomfortable. The people who designed this system, the banks, the institutions, the governments, they are not sitting in the dark worrying about inflation. Because inflation hurts people who hold cash. And the wealthy do not hold cash. They hold assets, property, stocks, gold, silver, real things. Things that rise in value when the currency weakens. So while your savings shrink, their wealth grows. Not because they are smarter, but because they understand something that most of us were never taught in school. But here is the part that Marcus told me that I never saw coming. He said the real danger is not what inflation is doing right now. The real danger is what people are doing, or more accurately, what they are not doing in response to it. He told me that every single week, people walk into his shop and say, I wish I had started earlier. Every week, young people in their 30s, middle-aged workers in their 40s, retirees in their 60s, all of them saying the same thing. And Marcus said that after 2 decades of hearing those words, he realized that the biggest financial mistake most people make is not a bad investment. It is waiting. It is staying comfortable in ignorance while time, the most valuable thing any of us has, quietly runs out. Now I know what some of you might be thinking. Okay, this is just a pitch for silver, but stay with me. Because what Marcus shared goes so much deeper than that. He was not trying to sell me anything that day. In fact, at one point, he leaned back in his chair and said, half the time I tell people the truth, they walk out and do nothing. And that's the saddest part of my job. What he was really describing, what this whole conversation was really about, was the psychology of financial denial. The way human beings are wired to avoid uncomfortable information, the way we tell ourselves, I'll deal with that later, and somehow, later never comes. Let me tell you about a woman named Priya. She is not famous. She does not have a YouTube channel. She is a school teacher. She taught 3rd grade for 15 years. She saved money every month in her bank account like she was told to do. She was responsible. She was careful. She lived below her means. And when she sat down with Marcus at 42 years old to understand why her savings did not feel like enough, why after 15 years of discipline she still felt financially fragile, he showed her something on a piece of paper that made her cry. Not dramatically, just quietly. The way people cry when they realize they have been working against themselves without knowing it. He showed her the purchasing power of the money she had saved versus what that same savings would be worth if she had held even a small portion of it in physical silver. The gap was not small. The gap was devastating. And here is what I want you to understand about Priya. She did not fail. She was not irresponsible. She did exactly what she was taught to do. But nobody taught her the full picture. Nobody sat her down and said, hey, the game has rules that they don't print on the box. And that right there is the whole point of this video. Now, let me explain something that Marcus calls the invisible robbery. And I want you to picture this as clearly as possible. Imagine there are two neighbors. Both of them earn the same salary. Both of them save the same amount every month. Neighbor A puts his savings in a regular bank account, earning maybe 1 or 2% interest per year. Neighbor B takes a portion of her savings and converts it into physical silver. 10 years pass. On paper, neighbor A has more cash. His account shows a bigger number. But neighbor B's silver, real physical metal, has held its purchasing power through two major economic shocks, a period of high inflation and a currency devaluation. When they both try to buy the same house in the same neighborhood 10 years later, neighbor B can afford it. Neighbor A is shocked to discover his savings are not enough. Same discipline, same income, different outcome. The only difference? One of them understood something the other did not. This is where everything changes. Marcus told me that silver specifically, not just gold, not just any commodity, but silver, is one of the most misunderstood stores of value in modern history. And he said the reason it is misunderstood is not accidental. He said, think about it. If ordinary working class people truly understood how to protect their wealth from inflation, the entire business model of financial institutions would be threatened. Because banks make money when you keep your money in their system. Investment firms make money when you buy their products. The whole machine depends on ordinary people not knowing there are simpler, older, more reliable ways to protect purchasing power. Silver has been used as money for over 4,000 years. 4,000 years. It is not a trend. It is not a cryptocurrency. It is not a fad. It is one of the oldest financial truths on the planet. But here's something Marcus said that genuinely surprised me. He said the biggest competition silver has, the biggest reason people do not take it seriously, is not gold. It is not crypto. It is not real estate. It is comfort. He said, people are not ignorant. People are comfortable. And comfort is the enemy of financial survival. When things are not catastrophically bad, when the grocery bill is high but manageable, when the rent is painful but you're still paying it, people find a way to normalize the slow bleed. They adapt. They cut back here and there. They tell themselves, it's hard for everyone right now. And in doing that, in accepting the slow decline as normal, they miss the window to act. I am going to pause here and be honest with you for a moment. When I first started looking into this topic, I was skeptical. I thought the whole buy silver narrative was just another sales pitch dressed up in economic language. And maybe some versions of it are. But the deeper I went, the more I realized that the core message has nothing to do with silver specifically. The core message is this: the money in your pocket is designed to lose value. And the only way to protect yourself is to convert some of that paper wealth into real, tangible assets that cannot be printed, that cannot be inflated away, that have held value across thousands of years of human civilization. Silver is one of those assets. So is gold. So is land. So is any real thing that exists in limited supply in a world of unlimited paper money. Most people never realize this part, but silver has a double power that gold does not have. Silver is not just a store of value. It is also an industrial metal. It is inside your phone. It is inside solar panels. It is inside electric vehicles. It is inside medical equipment. As the world moves toward green energy and advanced technology, the demand for silver is actually accelerating. So you have a metal that is already historically undervalued as a monetary asset, and on top of that, its industrial demand is growing faster than its supply. Marcus said, I have been in this business for 20 years and I have never seen a setup like this. He was not saying that with excitement. He was saying it with something closer to alarm. Let me tell you about another person Marcus mentioned, a young man named Daniel, 26 years old, delivering packages for a logistics company, working 6 days a week, living in a small apartment. When Daniel first came into Marcus's shop, he had $150 and a lot of skepticism. He asked Marcus bluntly, "Is this a scam?" Marcus told me he appreciated that question more than any polite one, because it meant Daniel was thinking. It meant he had not given up. Marcus spent an hour with Daniel, not selling, just explaining the history of money, the mechanics of inflation, the difference between currency and wealth. And by the end, Daniel bought 2 small silver coins. Not because he suddenly had extra money, but because he understood that even 2 coins was a better decision than 2 less coffees that month. 3 years later, Daniel came back. He was still delivering packages, still in the small apartment. But he had been buying small amounts of silver consistently, not to get rich, just to protect what little he had. And in those 3 years, the purchasing power of the money he had converted into silver had outperformed everything sitting in his bank account. He was not wealthy, but he was less fragile. And Marcus said, that is the whole point. You do not need to be rich to protect yourself. You just need to understand the rules of the game before the game takes everything from you. Now here is the uncomfortable truth that most financial channels will never say out loud. The system is not broken. The system is working exactly as designed. And the design does not prioritize you. It prioritizes the institutions that built it. This does not mean you cannot win within the system. It does not mean you are doomed. But it does mean that if you play the game without understanding the rules, if you just earn, spend, and save in paper currency and do nothing else, you're going to run very fast on a treadmill and wonder why you're not getting anywhere. Marcus told me about a conversation he had with a man who came in angry, genuinely angry. This man was in his 50s. He had worked his whole life, saved his whole life, done everything right by conventional wisdom, and he felt robbed, not by any single event, but by the slow, silent erosion of everything he had worked for. He said to Marcus, I did everything they told me to do. And Marcus said, I know, that's exactly the problem. The man stared at him for a long time, and then he sat down and said, okay, teach me. I think about that man often, because there are millions of people exactly like him, people who are not financially uneducated in the traditional sense. They balance their budgets, they avoid unnecessary debt, they contribute to retirement accounts, they do the right things, but they are doing the right things inside a framework that was never fully explained to them. And the missing piece, and the part that nobody at the bank, nobody in school, nobody in most mainstream financial advice ever really drives home, is that the currency itself is the risk, not the stock market, not interest rates, not inflation numbers on a government chart. The very thing we measure all our financial progress in, money, is the thing that is quietly, systematically losing its value every single year. And nobody talks about this part, but silver has historically been the working person's way out of that trap. Gold has always been there, but gold is expensive. A single gold coin can cost thousands of dollars. For someone saving on a modest income, that feels inaccessible. But silver? A single silver coin might cost $25 to $35. A small monthly commitment, even $50 or $100, can start building a real, tangible store of value over time. It is not glamorous. It does not go viral. It does not make you feel like a genius at a dinner party. But it works, quietly, consistently, across decades and generations. It works. Marcus showed me something in his back office that I will not forget. He had a small glass case. Inside it were coins from different eras. A silver coin from ancient Rome, a silver coin from medieval Europe, a silver coin from 19th century America. He said, every single one of these coins would buy you roughly the same amount of bread, oil, or basic goods today as it would have bought in its own time. Think about that. A coin from 2,000 years ago still holds its purchasing power. Now think about a $100 bill from 30 years ago. What does it buy you today versus what it bought then? The comparison is not even close. And yet we are conditioned to trust paper and distrust metal. We are conditioned to believe the new system is better than the old truth. But what if that conditioning, that comfortable, universal, unquestioned conditioning, is itself the con? But what happened next in my conversation with Marcus changed everything about how I understood the urgency of this moment. He told me that in all his years of business, he'd never seen the demand for physical silver and gold spike the way it has in recent times, not just from wealthy investors hedging their portfolios, but from regular people, young people, working families, small business owners, people who are not financial experts, but who have started to feel in their gut, in their bones, that something is not right, that the numbers on their bank app do not reflect the reality of their daily lives, that something is changing in the world, and the change is not moving in their favor. And those people, those ordinary, hard-working, slightly frightened people, are quietly converting paper into metal, not because they read a finance textbook, but because human instinct, when it is finally awake, recognizes real value. He said the banks know this, the institutions know this, and he said, and this is the line I keep coming back to, he said, they cannot hide this anymore. The gap between what they tell people and what is actually happening has become too wide. People can feel it now, even if they cannot explain it. Let me bring this home with one final story, because this one is personal. My uncle spent 35 years working for a manufacturing company. Loyal employee, never missed a day. He trusted the system completely. He put his savings in exactly the places he was told to. Retirement account, savings account, a little bit in bonds. When the company eventually downsized and he took early retirement, he sat down to calculate what he had. On paper, the numbers looked okay. Not great, but okay. But then he started doing the real math, the math of what things actually cost, what his bills actually were, what his life actually required. And the gap between what the numbers said he had and what the numbers actually meant in terms of real life security was heartbreaking. He was not poor, but he was far more fragile than 35 years of hard work should have left him. And nobody had ever told him why. Nobody had ever sat him down and explained that loyalty to paper is not the same as loyalty to wealth. I am sharing that story because I do not want that to be your story. I do not want it to be mine. And the truth is, the information to avoid that outcome has always existed. It is not secret. It is not locked behind a paywall or a private membership. It is ancient. It is in the history of every civilization that ever used silver or gold as money. It is in the patterns of every economic crisis that has ever unfolded. It is in the simple, brutal reality that real things hold real value, and paper things hold only the value of whoever printed them. Here's what I want to leave you with. This video is not telling you to sell everything and buy silver tomorrow. It is not financial advice in the technical sense. What it is an honest conversation about the information most of us were never given. The same conversation Marcus has been having for 20 years with working people who walk into his shop slightly scared, slightly confused, and completely underserved by the mainstream financial narrative. The lesson is not buy silver. The lesson is understand what money actually is. Understand that currency and wealth are not the same thing. Understand that time is your greatest financial asset. Not your salary, not your savings account, not your hustle. Time, deployed early with even small, consistent decisions, is the thing that separates the people who feel financially free in their 60s from the people who are still afraid. And it starts with awareness, with this conversation, with the willingness to sit with an uncomfortable truth long enough to do something about it. Because here's the final thing Marcus said to me as I was leaving. He walked me to the door, and he paused, and he said, "The people who come in here the most grateful are not the ones who made the most money. They're the ones who understood the earliest, because time is the only thing you can never buy back." That hit me hard, because every single one of us is sitting at a moment in time that we will never return to. The version of yourself reading this right now has more time ahead of you than the version of yourself who watches this video a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. The gap between understanding this today and understanding it later is not just information. It is years of compounding protection, years of quiet, real wealth building up, while the paper in everyone else's account slowly bleeds away. You do not have to do everything perfectly. You do not have to be an expert. You do not have to have a lot of money to start. You just have to stop waiting for the right time that will never come, stop trusting a system that was never fully designed to work in your favor, and start taking even one small, real step toward understanding and protecting your own financial future. The truth is out there. Marcus has been telling it for 20 years. Now, the question is not whether you can access it. The question is whether you are willing to hear it. And if you have made it to the end of this video, I think you already know the answer. If you learned something new today, make sure to subscribe to Money Insights and like this video. More powerful financial truths are coming next.